Pierre Poilievre holds a press conference to discuss yesterday's carbon tax vote and what it means for the country of Canada moving ahead. Let's get into it.
Oh, yeah!
What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome back to The Fringe on a lovely Tuesday morning. I certainly hope today's better than yesterday, and I welcome you back here. Just a side note as we start this video, that if you didn't join us yesterday as we set out our video talking about the vote on the carbon tax, that Pierre Poilievre had put a motion forward to essentially pause heating costs for Canadians all across Canada rather than just exempting heating oil, which is primarily used in Eastern Canada. A small percentage of people that use that are going to reap benefits, while everybody else is just told, keep paying and fill the pockets of Liberal slush funds for them to pad the pockets of heavy-hitting Liberal supporters. Now, Pierre Poilievre, of course, coming out and discussing what went on yesterday, what transpired, and what it means as we move forward. So we're going to take a look at that right now. I kind of wanted to touch base on this because, again, yesterday was kind of more of an angry video, and I know I apologize for that. Again, just getting the news and having to digest not just what happens in this household, but what that's going to mean for everybody's household. I want to see people be able to at least breathe a little bit this holiday season and not have to decide whether or not they can even afford to turn on their heat. But I wanted to showcase this video and take some time to look at what Pierre Poilievre has mentioned, what he's talking about, and maybe what it means for Canada moving ahead. So let's take a look at some of the things he has to say. We will stop periodically throughout this video to discuss his points, and then I'll wrap it up at the end. But here we go. Here's what Pierre had to say yesterday, folks.
A new carbon tax coalition with the separatists to divide our country. Given that the NDP was forced to flip-flop on Trudeau's plan to quadruple the tax, he had to find a new partner to keep him in power and avoid this non-confidence vote from passing. And who was there to save him? The separatists. So he's now signed on with the separatists to divide Canadians into two separate classes: those who will have to pay carbon tax on their home heat, and a small minority who will get a pause from the pain.
So before he continues, I wanted to touch base on that because, again, this is something that I mentioned in yesterday's video, that if Quebec does not pay carbon tax, if they're not a part of the carbon tax plan for Canada, why are they allowed to vote on it? I know people probably have their reasons and say, hey, oh, they're part of Parliament, they're a party, they exist, they should have the right to vote on everything. Well, if one end of the country is going to be given a discount on energy while the other isn't, then why is Quebec allowed to vote when we're showing favoritism to one group of people over another? It's division. They want division. This is what they want, and this is what they're getting. Let's continue.
All of Trudeau's MPs sold out their constituents and voted to make their home heating more expensive. Trudeau and his costly MPs have divided our country, raised our taxes, and pushed our people out into the cold. After 8 years of Justin Trudeau, 2 million people, a record-smashing 2 million people, had to go to the food bank in a single month. After 8 years of Trudeau, we've had the worst inflation in 4 decades and the fastest rises in interest rates in monetary history.
So, again, the usual talking points for Pierre, but one thing that you can stifle from this is again, the amount of people having to use food banks, the amount of people having to find alternatives, because their entire paychecks are going towards utility bills and rent and skyrocketed mortgages under some of the highest interest rates we've certainly seen in recent history. Now, what I said in previous videos is that this vote was going to go one of two ways. I believe that the vote was either going to go through and people were going to get their pause, and I know this was a non-binding vote, but it would have said volumes across the country as to where people stood, especially in terms of government, and those who voted against giving people a break would potentially seal their fate. I believe that that would mean that people in the future, anybody who has to incur any kind of inconvenience this winter, especially who isn't already incurring massive inconveniences from this tax, will not be voting for them. So again, I said it was a smart move by Pierre because not only did it put it out in the open for people to discuss it, for people to hold a vote, but it essentially means now that he is in a position to gain quite a few seats in the next election, based off of the reaction of those who voted to keep the carbon tax. So let's continue.
After 8 years of Trudeau, housing costs have doubled, and the share of an average paycheck required to make payments on an average home is higher than ever before. It now takes 25 years to save up for a down payment on an average Toronto home. It used to be you'd pay off an entire mortgage in that time period before Trudeau. And after 8 years of Trudeau, you can now buy a 20-bedroom castle in Scotland for a lower price than a 2-bedroom home in Kitchener. After 8 years of Trudeau, criminals ask if they can stay in jail longer so that they don't have to get out and pay the rent in his housing hell. And to make matters worse, Trudeau wants to quadruple the carbon tax on your heat, gas, and groceries. So with today's vote, and with his hide and divide strategy, Justin Trudeau has set us up for the carbon tax election. We don't know when it will come, but it will happen. And it will be...
So again, right there is exactly what I was talking about earlier, the carbon tax election. Pierre's now making it strictly about the carbon tax. It shows the deceptive practices of our government. It shows everything wrong with our government. And it shows how they're taking advantage of Canadians' tax dollars and essentially is going to be used as a tool to gain more seats in the next election than what would have previously come had we have seen a pause. And I firmly believe that. I think that when you look at eastern provinces like Newfoundland, who typically vote Liberal, while some folks are going to get a little bit of a break from heating oil, I think that this is going to anger the majority. And you might see some seats slipping in those areas, especially in areas like Pierre was visiting over last weekend when he was in Newfoundland doing his rallies. And again, polls are starting to show that Conservative voters are coming out of the woodwork and getting ready to prop up Pierre rather than continue their votes for Justin Trudeau. Now, it's interesting that when he talks about what it takes the average Canadian to save for a home, because I can tell you right now that most people right now who have an income of $60,000 a year plus, at least in the province of Alberta, from what I can speak on, is that 30% or slightly more of your income goes to taxes every time you're paid from your company. Now, if that 30% is drained and then you go out and you have to buy fuel, you have to buy food, you have to buy clothing, you're taxed again. It's a double dip. Who can afford to save up for a house or pay a mortgage when 30% of everything you make goes to the government for things like this, for money-wasting tax schemes to line people's pockets? Let's continue.
Simple choice between Justin Trudeau's plan to quadruple the tax on your heat, gas, and groceries and my common sense plan to axe the tax and bring home lower prices. Thank you very much.
Mr. Poilievre, specifically on, you keep promising to axe the tax. I understand you want to axe the carbon tax on consumer side. Can you clarify, would the Conservatives support a pollution price, a carbon price of any type on the industrial side?
Well, the heavy industry does not pay the carbon tax. It only applies on, the fuel charge only applies on gas, diesel, and home heating. And so we're going to axe the carbon tax.
But would the Conservatives support pricing pollution on the industrial side, as there is one?
Our election platform will deal with all these issues.
When will we see?
Okay, so it's going to heat up here, and this is one thing I wanted to showcase. This is the reason why I'm showing this entirety of this press conference, is because this is typically what we see and what's come up in recent days, is that a lot of the prostitutes will actually sit here and push Pierre as to, well, you don't have a climate policy. You don't have, so they're going to try to vilify him here, which is again where the question comes out. Well, if you're not going to tax the people, will you tax industry? Why not just not tax anybody? We can research greener technologies without having to tax everyone to death. And there's a reason Pierre isn't stipulating what his platform is, and that's one of two things. Either they're using it as a strategy to hold out until time of an election, to fine-tune what they want to do and get a very good perspective of what it is they're going to present the people with, or they're things that the public really just doesn't want to know right now. But I can guarantee you it doesn't involve a carbon tax. But let's continue.
When the carbon tax election happens, yes.
Monsieur Poilievre, à part le vote d'aujourd'hui et à part le vote d'aujourd'hui, qu'est-ce qui vous fait croire qu'il y a une coalition avec le Bloc et que l'entente avec le NPD, c'est chose du passé. Parce que là, vous dites c'est soit nous,
C'est la
soit la
presse.
coalition.
Est-ce que vous questionnez la presse?
Mais
La presse a confirmé qu'il y a eu une conversation entre les ministres libéraux et le Bloc pour garder Justin Trudeau au pouvoir pour deux
Okay, let's scroll past. Sorry,
Il y a
folks.
aussi-
French
Pourquoi est-ce que
question.
vous continuez
Saying
à
that the
dire- pourquoi est-ce que vous
Conservatives-
continuez à dire que la taxe carbone s'applique au Québec
Oui, c'est
alors
vrai.
qu'elle ne s'applique pas aux combustibles fossiles?
I know they're talking
Québec.
about Quebec.
C'est clair. C'est pas une-
Sorry, folks. I had a
Taxe carbone.
timestamp on this. Let's get it
Le
forward.
premier, qui s'appelle les combustibles, ça va augmenter la taxe sur tous les produits.
Have a climate plan. Would a Conservative government commit
Sorry
Canada
about that, folks.
to meeting the Paris targets?
Our common sense plan uses technology and not taxes to bring down both emissions and the cost of living. We've already said we will green light green projects like small modular nuclear reactors, hydroelectric dams, tidal wave power, and other emissions-free energy.
So when he touches on this, I just want everybody to think about this again for a second. And again, my apologies on the timestamp there. I lost my spot for doing other videos. When he's talking about hydroelectric, provinces like Manitoba, I grew up in Winnipeg, Manitoba, and I can tell you right now, they have a fantastic hydroelectric plant. And for the most part, Manitobans rely on that as a form of energy. Now, that is clean energy. And this is where I've said, instead of taxing people, we can get into other forms of a green energy structure that we already have access to. We can always do research. There's can always be, humans always evolve. You think back 30 years ago in the primitive technology, or at least technology that would have been considered primitive back then compared to what we have now, leaps and bounds can occur over decades. And I don't see how we won't be able to move forward so long as we keep our heads focused on, we need to do research, we need to think about the newest technologies, and do it without affecting everybody and crippling their wallets.
That will lead to a massive boom in the clean energy that goes onto our grids and powers our future. We said we will speed up the approval of lithium, graphite, cobalt, and other mines that will be necessary for the electric future. That is only possible if you get government out of the way and speed up approvals to green light green projects. That's a common sense plan. The common sense plan.
Will you sign on to the
Somebody
2030
hasn't ever-
targets?
Support the 2030 targets.
That's a good question.
Well, let's see how
I love that. Did you hear that? Did you support the 2030 guy? And you hear the guy, oh, that's a good question. They're all, the media's all prostitutes.
far off Justin Trudeau's carbon tax disaster is for meeting those targets, because so far he hasn't met a single solitary target when it comes to greenhouse gas reduction. So we now know, by Justin Trudeau's own admission, that the carbon tax is not a climate plan. According to him, you can remove the carbon tax off oil heat and it won't hurt the environment. That's his argument. So now the question you have to ask is that after 8 years in power, why is it that Justin Trudeau still doesn't have a plan to fight climate change? Thank you.
There you go, mic drop. And he hits it on the head there. And this is where I've been saying in our live streams, I've been saying in other videos that by calling out Justin Trudeau's ability to try and buy votes in the East by giving this exemption on heating oil, it's nothing more than a scam. It's nothing more than a way to keep voters at bay and keep, oh, he's such a nice guy. Look at the break he's giving us. I'll definitely vote for him in the next election. The climate change scam and the scam of a carbon tax has been unwound by Justin Trudeau himself, by coming forward and admitting that exactly what Pierre Poilievre said, that we can pause on this end and it doesn't harm the environment at all. When you look at Canada's gas emissions, greenhouse gas emissions, we are a drop in the bucket in comparison to other countries in the world like China, like India, even some parts of Europe. Canada is very low on the scale. In fact, we are one of the lowest emitters of carbon pollution in the world. And really, by phasing out everything by 2030, even if we could do it, just doesn't seem like a really viable reason to move forward. I'm not saying I hate the environment. I'm saying, do we really need to be putting all this punishment on our people unnecessarily for the sake of virtue signaling? I certainly don't think so. The Paris Accords certainly don't mean much at this point to me. But let me know what you guys think down below in the comments. Where do you see things heating up in the future? Do you think this is going to be an ongoing issue? Do you think it's just going to skate after yesterday's vote? I certainly don't think so. I think that constituents are going to be upset, and I think MPs are going to be dealing with a lot of emails, a lot of phone calls, a lot of in-person requests, and it's going to be interesting to see where Pierre takes this moving forward. But we now have our answer from the Liberals and the Bloc that Canadians don't matter. Your wallet doesn't matter. Your ability to afford things don't matter so long as their pockets are full. So let me know what you guys think down below in the comments. If it's your first time here, I hope this video has earned your subscription. Make sure as you're hitting that button, tap the bell for notifications, as less than 100 of our 11 some odd thousand subscribers are notified when our videos go live. Make sure you're here for when they drop, and make sure to comment, like, share them out. It helps gets us in the algorithm. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I'll catch you on the next one.